whenever you want to put that on, would be fine. All right, thank you. Yep, good. We're going to start, new word study. And in so doing, hopefully it will help us as we apply and seek to apply what we glean to our individual lives. And this one's going to be, I've got a number of components that are not necessarily in your handout. You've got, I think, 4 pages there. We'll see how it rolls this evening. When we talk about character, the word character itself actually appears in the Bible in the New Testament as a transliterated word. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about, well, I might as well do this now. Translation versus transliteration. Who knows it, now? Who's in here knows the difference already? Translation versus transliteration. All right, good. Yes, Anthony. Okay, well, so translation is going from a native from one language to another language, and you get what that word means in another language. So transliteration, as I'm going to show you examples, is where you take the original word, how it appears in that original language, and you try to find an equivalent letter in the target language. So you're not looking for meaning, you're just looking for, okay, how would I say that in my language? And I'm going to give you some examples. And there's a reason why I'm going through this right now. So just real quick. So not bad, Anthony. So in simple terms, translation is the process of converting one language to another. Doesn't matter what the language is. One language to another. That's translation. What does this mean? Key word. You had it right, Anthony. What does it mean? Transliteration, and so sometimes people get these mixed up, and when they talk about translation or transliteration. Transliteration, on the other hand, is just converting language from one script or one letter to another. And that's all. For our purposes, that's all. And you're going to see that what I have written down in the first paragraph of your handout is a transliteration. You have, Mounce in his, Professor Mounce is a instructor of New Testament Greek, and he gives this definition: a transliteration is the equivalent of a letter in another language. For example, the Greek beta, or as it looks, so you see up here, you see that B, that's not a B, it's a beta. And I'm going to show you something, and it's going to, in a minute. It comes across in English, we write it as a B. This does not mean that a similar combination of letters in the language has the same meaning. For instance, if you see the letters or saw the letters, that looks like cat, doesn't it? But it's Kappa, Alpha, Tau. Those 3 letters, and it's not a fraternity, Lyle. Kappa, Alpha, Tau. But that letter's a kappa, the second letter's a alpha, the third letter's a tau. And that's why I have it written there, Kappa, Alpha, Tau. Loud. You got your student. Does not mean cat, but if we were to transliterate it, that's how it would get transliterated, K-A-T. Just as the Greek beta and the English B have the same sounds, but they may not, but it of course doesn't mean B-E-E. Just as a means to help you see what I'm talking about, both charts are the same, just produced by two different groups. The one on the left goes back to when I was in school, 1980 something, and this is a little bit more modern. And so, just here's the Greek. This is the Greek alphabet. You have what we would call the capital, then the lowercase, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, chi, omicron, pi or pi, but it's P as in pit. We say pi, but it's actually P as in pit. Rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. That's the Greek alphabet. And so when you write one of these letters, or one of these letters are written, and so this omega is written, when you see it in the original language, it's transliterated as an O. But you don't see that O. You actually, in the Greek, it's, and I got ready to say a W, but it's not a, it's an omega. And so that's what happens with transliteration. Now you say, what's that got to do with what we're talking about? Look at your first paragraph, because the Hebrew word, the English word that appears in the Greek word that appears, I got Hebrews on my mind. I got Hebrews chapter 1 on my mind. I want to get there so bad. The English word character is a transliteration of the Greek word charik, with a K, ter. The Greek letters just come across, and it's so easy to just, it's almost like it was transliterated. Well, we got that we just transliterated in the English this beautiful word. In the book of Hebrews, in Hebrews chapter 1, in talking about God and how Jesus is the expressed image, the expressed representation of whom? The Father. Yes. In this case, I want you to say the Father. He is the image of the Father. And so look down, when we get down to look, I want to, before we read the next three paragraphs, Nash says this word basically meant an engraving cut in two, impressed or stamped on an object. Then look at, I've given you 5 translations of Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. King James, American Standard of 1901, ESV, Young's Literal Translation, and the New American Standard. And you begin to see how this word is translated. The King James, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image. That's that word character, the express image. The very image. Then that's what the American Standard, how it translates the word. And the very image of his substance. You know, God is spirit, so he can't present him in any human form because he doesn't have that. But when we see Christ, we see the character, and this is important to try to get this, of whom? The Father. Who said, show me the Father? Which one of the disciples? Said, show me the Father. How long have I been with you? And you say, show me the Father? Y'all don't remember just reading that recently? Thomas. Was it Thomas or John? Come on now. I'm actually, it was one of those questions in Luke, you're reading from Luke chapter 4. Luke chapter, let's see. It wasn't 21. And you say, have you not seen me? He said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Interesting. So then the Hebrew writer would later come back, and now the ESV says, and I like the way the ESV does this, he is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. The exact imprint. It's like one writer looked at it this way. If you ever work with a die, D-I-E, a die, so dyes, and I'm not talking about dyes, when you're, like ladies, when you're dyeing things, but a dye. Yes. And a dye is a metal mold that they make it, and boy, once you use it, it will continue to reproduce the exact image, the exact thing. Young's literal translation says, who being the brightness of the glory and the impress of his subsistence. Jesus is the impress of who deity is. And then the New American Standard, which a number of you use, and he is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature. So each of these translations is trying to get across that Hebrew word character, and here's what and it's trying to explain its meaning for us. And this is by the way, the only place where this word is found, this one word in Hebrews 1 verse 3 appears, is in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 3 in the entire New Testament. Does not appear in any other form, any place else in the New Testament. Look at this now. Let's go back to this example, this illustration. Let's see here if I can. Mike, blank the screen for a minute for me. I don't want us focusing up there yet. Just hit the B. Just press B. Oh, let me see if I can blank it from here. Nope. All right. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Pat, don't worry about it. So let's look at this illustration in the second paragraph on your sheet. I know you've had a chance to read it already. A nurse in a hospital went to her supervisor, and you need to get her attitude here. What is her disposition? She's angry, and she's heated anger because an orderly had bumped into her in the hall while she was carrying a basin of water. The supervisor asked her if the water spilled from the basin, when she replied with a lot of vehemence. What's vehemence? Yes. Yes. Loud, angry, forceful. Yes. Well, supervisor replied, that is true. And then the application. What's inside always spills out when we are bumped by someone? What's the point? All right, possibly she was angry before she got bumped. All right. Sister Tate? I'm sorry? All right, Sister Tate said she was just showing her character. Good point. Good, very good point. Anybody else? You all right? You okay? Yeah, you all right? Okay. Well, I was going to make sure you were all right. I saw you doing a few things, and I saw your wife looking at you like, uh-oh. So I want to make sure, if we got to jump into action. Patrick are ready to jump into action. He noticed I'm volunteering somebody else. Oh, touche. Ooh, touche. Way to go, CD. Oh, that hurt. You taught him all that, Jerry? Yeah. Ooh, that's very good. Very good. Anybody else? Do I need to turn my back around for anybody else? All right. So she was concerned about the liquid that had spilled out the basin. Her supervisor saw something else. Yes, the supervisor was concerned what was coming out of her. And that's just and that's what character is. So think about it like this. Think about Hebrews chapter 1:3. Jesus is he's the exact representation. He is the exact image of the Father. And so throughout his life, we see the Father. And as Peter would tell us, 1 Peter chapter 2, 21 through 23, we saw what came out of him. And we're not talking about blood and water, but other things as he went through life. Hence, as Donald Nash, in his work, made this observation, he said, hence a person's character is the sum of his impression on society and deals with what we are in all our human relationships. Appreciate Brother Nash for his thoughtfulness there. Success in life depends not on position, but disposition. If you've already been reading the story on the screen, I believe Neil Pollard gave me this one, and it's supposed to be a true story. In the northeastern United States, codfish are a big commercial business. How many of you like cod? I know I do. There is a market for eastern cod all over, especially in sections far east removed from the northeast coastline. But the public demand posed a problem to the shippers. At first, they froze the cod, then shipped them elsewhere, but the freeze took away much of the flavor. So they experimented with shipping them alive in tanks of seawater, but that proved even worse. Not only was it more expensive, the cod still lost its flavor. That's important here. In addition, became soft and mushy. The texture was seriously affected. If any of you ever have cod, you don't like cod when it gets mushy. It just terrible. Finally, some creative person solved the problem in a most innovative manner. The codfish were placed in the tank of water along with their natural enemy, the catfish. From the time the cod left the East Coast until it arrived at its westernmost destination, those ornery catfish chased the cod all over the tank. And you guessed it, when the cod arrived at the market, they were as fresh as when they were first caught. There was no loss of flavor, nor was the texture affected. If anything, it was better than before. Now, before you comment about that, we're going to look at the next place where another word that relates to character is used, and you'll see how this illustration fits. And that has to do with the passages that we have on the back on your sheet on page 2. We have another Greek term which needs to be considered, and it's the Greek word dokimi. Let's go to Romans chapter 5, and we'll read verse 3, and then we're going to look at Romans 5, verse 4, and a number of passages, and then we'll look at this word in how it's used in a number of other passages. And I think as you observe the use of this term, it's going to help us to understand about character that we are to have as God's people. So in Romans chapter 5, of course, Paul begins talking about how we are justified by faith. And then he says in verse 3, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance. And so we talked about that this week. And now verse 4, at New King James, and perseverance, character. It is not the word that is used in Hebrews 1:3. This is a different word. It's the word dokimi. And character, hope. Now, you have on your chart how that word is translated by the various translations. King James, and patience, experience. So it translates that word dokimi as experience. The American Standard translators, they prefer to translate the word, and by the way, each of these English terms are acceptable. Just like you go to an English dictionary, you see a word has multiple terms that it can be translated with. So each of these words that are translated are accurate terms as the translators are trying to give you the full sense of the word. American Standard of 1901, and steadfastness, approvedness. And that's something we don't hear. We don't go around talking today in 2023 of approvedness. But you can probably, if you think about it, figure out what it means. And approvedness, hope. The English Standard Version, they went back to the same thing, the New King James, and endurance produces character. And character produces hope. Young's literal translation, and the endurance, experience, and the experience, hope. And then the New American Standard, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope. So the New American Standard translators tried to give a little bit more meaning as opposed to necessarily literal translation. Again, we go back up to the top of the sheet where I have for you. It means tested, accepted, approved. The noun used here has a twofold usage. It means first, the process of trial, proving the test, and secondly, the result of trial, approved, or as the American Standard says, approvedness. Character is developed through what? Through trial. Through perseverance. Think about the illustration of the cod and the catfish. When taken out of its natural environment, when removed the wrong way, didn't work. But when that cod was working real hard to keep away from that bottom feeder, catfish is good for more than just chasing cod. We're going to have to just give you, slide you a little piece. Don't tell me you won't eat it. Oh, okay. All right. There you go. Good man. Good man. Think about it this way. Sometimes we say, God, remove all of these things from my life. If God were to remove the things that we need to make us stronger, what would happen to us? All right, bored to death. But if God had removed everything from Job, would Job have become better? No. No. Job was forged through the fire. Where do we get that phrase, by the way? Forged through the fire. That's part of it, yeah. If you ever work in a foundry, a forge, even if you haven't never done this, how many of you ever watched, whether it's Gunsmoke or your favorite old Western? What's one of the scenes in your favorite Western, whether it's Gunsmoke, John Wayne, any Western? There's something that every town had to have. Blacksmith. Because he was working with fire, metal, making them horseshoes, making tools, and what did he need? A lot of heat, a lot of fire. And in order to get that, he had to get the metal hot enough to bend it, and then you cool it down, but a good shoe was forged through the appropriate fire. And if it didn't get the right amount of heat, what would happen to a horseshoe? It'd break. It would not last. Blacksmith wouldn't be in business very long if he didn't know how to make a good horseshoe in those days. And it would have to go through, and he knew how much heat to apply so that it would be able to last. I use this illustration Sunday when we're talking about with Norris working, with tires, same principle. So let's look at how this word is used in these other passages, and I think you're going to become surprised with regards to the character or what it's how it's presenting what God expects of us. So let's take a look at each of these passages where this word dokemi is found. Pat, do you have 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse number 9? We're going to look at each. It's not that many of these. And these are the only places, by the way, where this word is used in the New Testament. So we can look at these passages. Now, Paul writing to the church at Corinth, this is his second epistle to them. And in this particular chapter, in this section, he is dealing with them. They had this brother who was committing a sin. In his first letter, he told them what they needed to do against this brother because of his sin that he was engaged with in the congregation. They did what Paul told them to do, withdrew their fellowship from him to get him to repent. He evidently did. Now this is where Paul is writing to them, and look at verse number 9. Oh, yes, 2:9, chapter 2, verse 9. Yes, sir. So the word that he's talking about is put you to the test. There's that word. He was trying to see if they would be approved. He is looking at their spiritual what? Character. Their character. Christian character. Let's stick with the church at Corinth. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Second Corinthians chapter 8. Yes, so before you read, CD, background of this. So here he's talking to this congregation about their willingness to give financially to those who are in need in another city. So go ahead, CD, verse 2, 2 Corinthians 8:2. Yeah, so the word there again is used, proof. Their proof came through in what they did. Their trial of affliction, it came through. Their evidence of who they were spiritually came through in what they did. They just didn't talk a good talk. But their character, even though they were poor, they were rich in their ability to give to others. Chapter 9, verse 13. He's talking in chapter 9 again about their giving, about their attitude or their in this grace. Who's got 2 Corinthians 9, verse 13? Thank you, Sister Diane. And so he's saying you have proven what's been tested by their actions. So they had responded to the plea, and they gave more than even Paul had imagined they would. And then in chapter 13, verse 3, and it is interesting how many times Paul uses this word to this congregation. This congregation who he said, he said that they would be his epistle written on their heart. The word truly was dwelling in them, and they were manifest. This congregation that started out so bad, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 4, you're carnal minded. Well, something happened. The word stayed in them, and they were able to grow and change. 2 Corinthians 13, and what did I say? Verse 3. Who's got it now? Go ahead, Jerry.
Since you seek the proof of Christ speaking in me, which to you word is not weak, but is mighty in you. It's
interesting how here he said the word proof there is the word that, in essence, that which passes examination. There were those who were questioning Paul's apostleship, his authority as an apostle, and he says there, since you have you're seeking this this validation in me, who is not weak toward you but mighty in you. So they were looking for some kind of evidence that he was who he said he was. And then the last place where this appears is in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 22. Paul is talking about, thank you, Sister Penny, he's talking about Timothy, and he is commending Timothy to the church at Philippi. New King James says, but you know his proven character. And so Paul is saying, you know who Timothy is. Now, I don't know if I put this. Okay, thanks. All right, thank you. Neil Pollard, who held a meeting for us, he's one of the preachers at the Lehman Avenue congregation in Bowling Green, Kentucky. A number of years ago, Neil wrote this, and I didn't put this on the screen. I just want to read this to you. Neil wrote this, and it's called, It's About Character. Wayne Roberts was teaching the advanced homiletics class this morning in the small library. His student body is our future preachers, and his message thrilled me. He was talking about God's messenger and how a man may be a golden-tongued orator or orator. What's a gold? Now, what's this? Yeah, okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah, golden-tongued orator means he's got the gift of gab. So he says he may be a golden-tongued orator and have the gift of gab, yet say that which impacts and changes no one. It made me think of men I have known who have an amazing speaking ability, but whose character is flawed and faulty. It may involve their financial dealings, moral indiscretions, or attitude problems. Yet their message is eclipsed by their manner of life. His second paragraph, I have also known men a bit shorter on talent, but whose effectiveness is enhanced by the fact that they live what they preach. The message lived in their lives. Then he asks the question, which would we rather hear? Our ideal is to take the man with character and teach him how to improve his homiletics, which means sermon delivery, and to polish his rough edges. It is far easier to do that than it is to reform a very flawed character. Certainly God's word is powerful enough to bring about reform, and he will aid those who pray for strength. But how much better it is to continually hone right character while honing speaking skills. As in any area of life, preaching is largely about character, close quote. Brother Neil did a great job, and I asked him if I could use that, and he said, go ahead. And what I understand, it's a true story. He did not identify the congregation or where it came from, but so that's challenging, isn't it? All of us, none of us are perfect, are we? No. The only perfect one was Jesus. So we all have room to grow and to shape and to improve and develop this character that we're talking about. And when we look at this particular, this word character, especially as it applies to us. Now, we're not talking about the Christ, oh, now you're hot. We can't get it right. We can't get it right. No. We had it, but it was so cold, we decided that we needed to do something, so. Ooh. We got it right down. We got it right down your alley tonight, CD. All right, we got a little bit of circulation going on there. So note what we have underneath that chart, that first sentence. From a study of the teachings of Christ and his apostles, we can analyze all human relationships into three areas: our behavior toward God, in essence, our behavior toward others, and our behavior toward self. When the Jew, when the lawyer came to Jesus and he asked him, what is the greatest commandment in the law? How did Jesus respond to him? What did he say, Penny? All right, Matthew 22, he said, first is this, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. The second is like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. On these two hang the law and the prophets. Our attitude toward God is essential. If we're going to develop the kind of character that God wants, that we've just read about, that Paul spoke of to those individuals at Corinth, and he talked about with Timothy, this if we remember, Jesus was the expressed image of the Father. We are to allow Christ to be in us so that the world might see whom? The world can see him and us. See, too many times they see us and not him. So what we're trying to develop is that character or that disposition so that the world can keep seeing him, more of him and less of me. We sing that song, I think the stanza, Jerry, it finally ends, more of thee and less of me. I can't think of which song that is. But it goes like 5 or 6 stanzas, and then the last stanza is this idea, more of thee, less of me. And our last bell. All right, so they're coming in. We'll be looking at this. Believe in the ultimate triumph of right. Work to discipline the mind. We'll come back to these week after next. Do not overlook small things. Recognize that God requires our best efforts. Recognize that service is a key in character. When Jesus was talking with the 12, and that in his final set of instructions, they were arguing about who was going to be first in the kingdom and all of that. And he says that's what the Gentiles do, but not so among you. The one who wants to be great, let him first become your servant. Remember, he said, I did not come to be served, but to serve. Choose companions wisely. And of course, remember the temporary nature of material and the lasting nature of things eternal, things spiritual. We sing, this world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. If we will remember that we're not trying to treasure up for ourselves treasure here on earth, it'll go a long way in helping us develop the kind of character that is pleasing to God. All right. Did you knock on their door? I know. All right. Brother Lyle's going to come before us. And any questions before we stop there? Next week we'll have a guest because we'll be on vacation.